welcome. I'm Kenli Schoolland, and here we are today at the World Anti-Extremism Network's inauguration ceremony, and I'm delighted to be able to have this opportunity to interview Simon Lee, who was previously a columnist for Apple Daily. He is a co-founder of the Lion Rock Institute, a free market think tank in Hong Kong, and now most recently started a startup called Unsubject, which has created a learning community to bring together the diaspora of people from Hong Kong to connect the community and discover what to do to strengthen Hong Kong in the face of this new threat from China. So today I want to ask Simon about really what's happening there in Hong Kong. He has a very fascinating story. He's grew up there, but in recent years, he's been forced out from the country. And now, from what I hear, you can't go back. Is that right?
I'd rather not to until it is perfectly safe for me to do so. What happened was I used to work for a company called Apple Daily. And it is just a newspaper. And I used to be a columnist and also a business manager. But in year 2020, Hong Kong government was looking after everyone who has to do with Apple Daily, especially in the managerial position. So I understand that the dates are numbered. So I left Hong Kong after they imposed the national security law. And a few weeks after I left, the police raided the newspaper, and eventually it was shut down by the government.
Wow. What do you think would happen if you go back now?
If I go back now, they will lock me up, ask me questions to see if I know something. But to be honest, it would take a long time for me to actually share with them if I know something. I mean, I know that authoritarian regimes cannot last. I mean, do they want to hear it?
I wouldn't bring that up then.
There are a lot of things I want to tell them, but I'd rather tell them from where I am now.
And so could you give us a little overview of what's really happening in Hong Kong? What's the outlook? What is the situation now?
Okay, long story short, a lot of people focus on what happened after 2019. Yes, after 2019, the oppression is still going on. The Chinese Communist Party want to present to the world that Hong Kong is going back to normal, but it is not like anything that we know. People are so afraid to speak out. People are so afraid to talk about things. They were, like a lot of people, they try to speak in a strange manner, and because they thought someone is listening. So it is really that bad. From one of the world's most free society just 10 years ago to one of the world's most censored society now.
And is the change just in sort of political freedom, or is it also economic freedom that's being affected here?
I mean, freedom at the end of the day is the power to say no to whoever. Nowadays in Hong Kong, whether you are just a common ordinary citizen, or if you're tycoons, or anyone working in the government, guess what? A few days ago, there was a new directive saying if you work for the government, you should never criticize anything. I mean, okay. And I don't know how far that would extend. As long as you hold a Hong Kong residency, then perhaps you should not complain too much about it. Well, I don't know where the red lines are drawn. And so that is basically it. A lot of unofficial, informal suppressions is going on.
Okay. And are people very aware of what's going on?
Oh, yes.
Yes. But they're just afraid, so they don't
like give you one example.
Uh-huh.
So, of course, there are things that if you say you get you trouble, you will have police come to you and things like that. But there are things somewhere less less concrete, and they call it a soft resistance. So, what about teachers trying to tell the other side of the story to students? What would happen? Teachers might lose his job. That is the minimum, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if a teacher has a student talks about something, the teachers might freak out and say, "Hey, shh, don't say anything." So the students will say, "Okay, that's what the teacher says." Okay, shh. And that kind of like influence from different layers, from teachers to students to parents to, I don't know, grandparents, like everyone becomes so aware of all these political red lines. And that is what is going on in Hong Kong.
So, what do you expect in the coming years for Hong Kong? Do you think that it's going to fall more under Chinese control? Do you think the people are going to rise up?
Okay, there's a word. I recently learned it. It's called involution.
Involution. Okay.
So it is like we know revolution, right? Okay, let's change the system. That is revolution. Involution is when the institution becomes more inward looking and try to isolate itself from the outside world. And that is involution. What happened in Hong Kong is actually being like involved more and more to the like mainland China. And this is what I am so afraid of. Nowadays, Hong Kong people do rely on overseas medias, overseas commentary on the affairs going on in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong government might censor. The easiest thing for them to do is to block the access to different websites, to different channels outside of Hong Kong. They might also want to have this targeted siloing of information. Now we're in Canada. I don't know if you realize, if you go to Facebook, if you still use Facebook, if you have a Facebook account, if you access Facebook from Canada, you realize that all the news-related content on Facebook is blocked.
Really?
Yes. You know, Facebook has the capability of blocking specific type of content in specific geographical area. And that could happen into Hong Kong as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that will happen to Hong Kong.
If it's happening here.
And think about YouTube, think about all these major social media platforms. In year 2024, Hong Kong government will pass a new law called the Article 23. I think this kind of measures will be put in place, written into the law, giving the government power to request social media platform to black out all the information, all the sources that they do not want Hong Kong people to see. That could happen in a matter of months.
Incredible. But this is something that we're seeing all over, like you mentioned, in Canada and in the US. It's definitely happening. Censorship is increasing around the world. What are the things that you think that we can do about it? Because a lot of times it's subconscious. We're not aware of it because you just stop seeing these things in your feed. What do you think we can do to combat this?
Well, like receiving information from this algorithmic, like feeding information to you, is not healthy anyway. So I think one of the most important things is for people to have the critical thinking and to really actively seek information rather than being fed. That comes back to what I'm doing at Unsubject.
Yeah, can you tell us a little more about that?
Unsubject appears to be a word. It is a word. Interestingly, most dictionary words you cannot find domain that you can register. But interestingly, when I started my Substack, it asked me to write, okay, what's the subject of your newsletter? I don't know. Unsubject, and then I go to like GoDaddy and see if Unsubject is available, and Unsubject is available. So I get the domain, and it's like, okay, now everything I do is Unsubject. Unsubject also means free.
Yeah, I liked the explanation that you gave to it too, because I was thinking of subject as a topic, but you said subject like to be subjected.
To be subjected. And I find a lot of people who left Hong Kong, they really want to understand, like firstly, what were the propagandas they have been fed by the government or maybe by the education. So
how do you do this exactly?
Then we started discussion groups and sharing and reading clubs, and I tell them, okay, if you're interested about a particular policy area, instead of studying the policy, actually sometimes we study how the government promotes a policy from that perspective to look at, okay, this is the technique they use to get people to agree to give up their freedom. How people give up their freedom. For people who spent the past 30 years in Hong Kong, I think it would be fair to say freedom is not gone in one night. It was a gradual process. Now, looking back, we can see in a higher resolution on how sometimes the government presents something in a way that is not completely false, but not totally
accurate.
true. So one of the major focus on my group at Unsubject is to really see through how government structure and present the policies.
So what I'm hearing from you too is that you're not focusing not necessarily on a broad campaign to try to change the government, but you're instead focusing on the individuals. You're focusing on changing people's minds or encouraging them to be critical thinkers so that they develop resistance from the grassroots. Why did you take that approach?
I will. Maybe I started it during the pandemic. So to me, I think a lot about immunity and like how can you make people more healthy? Sometimes you have to expose them to a weakened version of the virus. So why don't we just take all this propaganda material, weaken them by really deconstructing the whole propaganda materials. And so when people see that, okay, I have been infected, but now I recovered and I developed this immunity, great. So maybe that's how it works.
I love it. Thank you. Well, I would love to keep talking, but unfortunately we're out of time. But for anyone who's interested, we're here today to discover the ways that we can combat extremism and authoritarianism around the world. So if someone wants to get involved with what you do, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Just email to Simon at unsubject.com. Yay. I get a domain. I mean, that's great.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah. Simon at unsubject.com.
Okay.
Just have a good chat about that.
You heard it. Okay, so thank you so much for your time here. We look forward to having you on the panel soon, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you for your time.